So, what makes an idea truly immortal? I'll give you a hint. It's not about going viral, and it's definitely not about being popular. Today, we're going to dive into a pretty radical framework that says real strength, the kind that lasts, comes from just one thing: survival.
Right out of the gate, the source material hits us with this line. This essay is intentionally unfashionable. Okay, so we're immediately being told to just throw out what's trending. This isn't about chasing likes or getting quick approval. It's about building an idea that's designed to last, even if it gets ignored or, totally misunderstood for a while.
And this image, man, it just nails the whole concept. The point is to stop thinking about marketing your ideas. Forget the careful sales pitch. Instead, you got to think of them more like dandelion seeds. You just release them into the wind. And their real value, it isn't measured by how well you sell them. It's measured by whether they can actually find a crack in the pavement and survive all on their own.
Okay, so let's get into it. What does it actually mean to treat an idea like a living thing, like an organism? Well, to really wrap your head around this, you have to kind of flip a switch in your brain. You have to stop seeing an idea as a finished product and start seeing it as something alive.
This right here, it just turns our normal way of thinking completely upside down. I mean, we're all taught to protect our best ideas, right? To shield them from any and all criticism. But this framework argues that's actually a huge sign of weakness. An idea that needs you to constantly defend it isn't strong. It's just fragile.
So this all boils down to a really cool concept called the Lindy Effect. And it's basically a rule from evolution. The longer an idea has already survived, the longer it's likely to keep surviving. Just think about it for a second. A book that's been in print for 100 years has a way better chance of being around in another 100 than today's #1 bestseller. Why? Because it has already proven that it's fit enough to survive the ultimate test, which is just time itself.
And that brings us to a really important distinction the author makes, because just like in biology, it turns out there are different species of ideas, and you better believe they have very, very different strategies for staying alive.
So first up, we have what he calls fragile ideas. The best way to think about these is like a hothouse flower. It's beautiful, sure, and it's perfectly designed for its little controlled environment. But what happens when you take away that protection? You change the context, you expose it to the real world, and it just wilts, it's gone. These are your corporate buzzwords or management fads that only make sense inside one specific building.
And then, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you've got Lindy ideas. These are the dandelions. I mean, they're unstoppable. They thrive in the cracks in the sidewalk. They don't care if you ignore them or misunderstand them. Take the golden rule, for example. It pops up in almost every culture, nobody really knows who first said it, and its core logic is so simple it survives even when people get the wording wrong. It actually gets stronger from all that chaos.
And here's the side-by-side that makes it all crystal clear. Fragile ideas, they need constant defense, they love institutions. Lindy ideas, they survive being ignored, and they're almost allergic to institutions. So really, it's a choice. Are you building an idea that's perfectly optimized for right now, or one that's built to last forever?
So the big question is, if these Lindy ideas don't need to be popular or persuasive, how in the world do they actually survive? Well, the answer is a pretty brutal but really effective filtering process. And it's all about letting go of control.
There's basically a 3-step path here. First, you have to compress your idea down to its absolute core logic, its tiny little seed. Then, step 2, you release it. You just let it go out into the wild, into what the author calls the solar winds of random, unpredictable life. And finally, you just let it survive. Reality itself does all the filtering, and any idea that makes it through that process has proven a kind of strength that no amount of marketing could ever give it.
And here's where you really need a big mindset shift. In our culture, we tend to see any critique as damage, as an attack. This framework says, nope, that's not it at all. Stress is just information. Hitting a roadblock isn't damage. It's what the author calls nutritional stress. It's the force that actually shows you what an idea is made of, tests it, and ultimately makes it stronger. If you shield an idea from that stress, you're not protecting it, you're crippling it. Okay, now this part might seem a little weird at first. You'd think that our big institutions, universities, media, governments, that they'd be all about finding and preserving the best ideas, right? Well, the argument here is that they actually end up selecting for the opposite. They prefer the fragile, dependent ideas. And the reason for that is because there are two totally different games being played. Institutions select for institutional fitness. That means ideas that can survive peer review, get funding, and don't rock the boat too much. But that is completely different from environmental fitness, which is the ability to survive contact with messy, real-world chaos. An idea can be an all-star in that first game and be totally, completely useless in the second one. And this is where the question really comes back home to us. Think about the beliefs you hold on to the tightest, the ones you feel like you always have to defend. Now ask yourself, honestly, is that belief a hothouse flower that would just fall apart without you? Or is it a dandelion that would probably keep growing even if you walked away and forgot all about it?
So how do you actually apply this stuff? If you want to create something that's really built to last, you have to master a pretty radical skill, and that is the art of letting go.
The goal here isn't to manage how people react to your idea. It's not about controlling the audience. It's about trusting that reality itself is the only editor that matters. It means you have to be willing to release ideas that are so tough they can survive being misunderstood or even used in ways you didn't intend, because their core logic is just that strong. It's this deep, profound trust in the process, not the immediate outcome.
And this quote just wraps it all up perfectly. The ideas that have actually shaped our world didn't get there because they got approved by a committee or because they were popular for a season. They spread because they were fit. They survived the environments they were thrown into. And in the end, survival is the only argument that really, truly matters.
So we're left with this final, really provocative question. This whole framework challenges us to look right past all the noise of today's arguments, and it suggests that maybe, just maybe, the ideas we work so hard to keep safe are actually the most fragile ones of all, while the ones we ignore or even call dangerous might just be the dandelions that will end up defining the world long after we're all gone.